All right, let's make 1,000-layer potatoes again, but different. Last time I tried with cheese. Now we're going to try putting sausage in them. I've seen people do this on Instagram and on YouTube. I'm a little hesitant, but we're going to give it a try. First, my least favorite part. I'm not going to make you watch it, though. We're going to go ahead and peel potatoes. These, as always, are russets. I guess you could use Yukon Gold if you prefer that, but this is what I recommend. And then we're going to mandolin these as thin as you can get them. I do it into a bowl of cream just to kind of stop the oxidation, but you don't need to do that step. Next up, we will layer them like we usually do. I won't make you watch that all. I'm going to put it on a time lapse here, but if you do want to see how we do this step by step, I'll post a link here to the first time I did this, which so far has been the best attempt. But between each layer, we also put a nice little butter mixture. Try to create nice even layers. You don't want one side thicker than the other, so just kind of be aware of that as you're laying them down. Feel it out a little bit. But now we're going to try the new part, which is laying down sweet Italian sausage. My thought process is this will kind of make this a little more breakfasty. I'm going to try to get as thin of a layer here as I can, but also try to make sure it's even. It will help in the long run to try to keep this as even as possible. That way when you cook them later, they're even, but also as you continue stacking and layering them, you won't have one side bulging more than the other. But just keep that going. Try to get that flat as well as you can. I'm using the back of my hands here to try to kind of push it down, feel where the high spots are. But once you do that, you're just back to layering potatoes. I tried to do this halfway, which I think by the end of the video, you'll see that I did a fairly good job of. But prior to that, I'm going to salt this sausage a little bit. I'm also going to put a little bit of pepper. This is the only seasoning I put inside besides the salted butter. But just a little bit of seasoning here on the meat, and then we're going to go right back to trying to do the same amount of potato layers as we did on the bottom, but now on the top. Once you finish that, just lay that parchment paper over it. This will protect it in the oven. And then I'm going to put this into an oven at 325. I previously did it at 375, but I'm trying a little bit of a lower, slower cook to this. For the last 20 or 30 minutes, I even lower it down to 300 just to make sure it's not browning too much. And I think that worked well. So going forwards, that's how I'm going to cook them, and I recommend also cooking them somewhere between 300 and 325 Fahrenheit. I think that's about 150-ish Celsius, but I'll actually write down here on the bottom what it is. Once you pull them out, try to not cook both loaf pans like I did, because now I'm going to have to separate those. But here's how it looks. The edges are a little bit crispy and brown, which is fine, but the actual middle potatoes themselves haven't overcooked yet, which is going to make them a little better later in the cooking process because they're not past where you want them. Now just weigh it down. The one thing I did notice from using the sausage this time was there was a lot more oil and grease when I went to weigh them down. Haven't had this issue prior, and I've used all the same amount of cream and butter, so I think this is the fat rendering off the sausage. I come in now and I kind of dab it off using paper towel, and then I'll also, for the first hour or so that it's in the fridge, I'm going to leave a paper towel in there to just soak up as much from the top as I can, so just be aware of that. That might screw up your layering, so just try to get as much oil out as you can. But now throw that in the fridge for 6 to 24 hours, and then you're ready to go. Pull that out. The same steps as last time. They may be stuck to the inside of the loaf pan, so if you need to use a little hot water, that's totally fine. Just get the pan a little warm, and then you should be able to pull them out like this. Try to not break any layers, so be very gentle. I'm at this point going to try to take it off of the parchment paper, but it is so greasy from the sausage that it's very hard to maneuver. It wasn't this difficult in previous iterations, so the sausage has definitely made things a little more complicated, but now I'm just going to trim the edges so I have nice 90-degree rectangular pieces to cut up. Also try to get into the part where the sausage is, not just the potato parts on the edge. Once I do that, I'm going to cut these into the rectangular 1-inch slices. That's how I like to cook them. This will yield somewhere between, I think, 6 to 10, depending on how thin or thick you cut them. Very nice for a breakfast, though. And then I'm going to put these onto a plate, and I'm going to put them in the freezer just because they still felt a little malleable, I think, from the grease and there being a giant meat layer in the middle, so they're not as sturdy as the just potato ones. So about half an hour in the freezer before cooking. Getting that oil now up to around 325, 350. I have it higher this time, and I'm also doing it in a pot so I could cook them both sides at the same time because I was worried about flipping and the middle layer kind of breaking apart, which they do kind of. Some of them didn't hold together as well as other ones because of the meat, but all in all, it didn't completely ruin the structure. You just got to be a little more gentle with them. Once you pull them out and they're a nice golden brown, this one's not there yet, but you're going to want to pull them out, throw them onto a piece of paper towel, and just hit them with a little bit of salt while they're nice and hot, and the oil will kind of melt that salt into the texture. And that's the color you're looking for right there. It looks like the meat also continued to shrink a little bit, which is why I'm thinking some of the layers pulled apart. But all in all, they held shape fairly well, as you can see here. Some peeled apart a little bit, but they look good. It looks like the bottom I did a little thicker than the top. But all in all, they were right where I wanted them. Now let's give them a taste and see how they are. I'm going to cut this one in half just because it was falling apart a little bit. But let's give it a try. Taste-wise, not as good as the original, but the sausage gives it a nice little breakfast kind of element to it. You get that sausage, you get the potatoes. Give it a try. I don't think it's better than the original, but it was fun to try.